Thanks very much for coming. We're here, thank you. I'm just glad to be here in person.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks for coming along. Thanks for coming to listen to us. We're here to talk about Sitecore Customer Data Platform, CDP, and just to give you a few practical examples that leverage the decision model and some that don't, but the vast majority of them do. We'll go from there. So my name's James. I'm a European practice lead at Avanade, which is obviously a subsidiary owned by Accenture. So what I tend to do is work with architects and offering leads across Europe and help them match Sitecore to their stack and work out ways to work with Sitecore and them and find ways to solution Sitecore for them in ways that make sense for them.
I'm Dominic. I'm a strategy MVP working for InfinityWorks, which again is under the Accenture umbrella. So a lot of my stuff is personalization, optimization, getting involved at the what should be at the front, but normally ends up at the back. We'll change that today.
The stuff that's often overlooked but should have been at the very beginning.
Yeah. So before like I said, we're going to go to 5 really good examples on the demo website. But before we do that, I want to sort of lay the story out, because obviously you can't just jump straight into CDP and start clicking buttons. Things have to happen. So I wanted to talk about like the strategy and the main bits. These are like sort of like tips and tricks, but the main bits is to start looking at your customer journey. So work with the UX guys, marketing guys. The whole point for CDP and to personalize is to leverage other pain points or to leverage opportunities in my eyes. And you get that from the looking at a roadmap. So I'll give you some examples in a minute. As it says here, the key things to do when you're looking at a customer journey, look at where people come in, where they leave, different devices, where there's gaps in the journeys, those type of things, where there's interactions, they're the things to look out for. And you'll see 2 examples here. I'll show you. Yeah, so these are from other websites, but they're 2 very good ways of doing journey maps. So the one on the left has everything in there. You've got various different things. You've got like the scenarios, the person who's involved, the bits which are numbers. Don't worry about them. You don't have to know too much, but you can see there's a little wavy line. That is the journey. That's where someone's pain points are. So when it's good, it's a good journey. When it's underneath, it's a bad. There, where then you start filling in the blocks underneath, where there's the opportunities to target. You've also got who's involved, events as well. So whether someone's clicking things, whether they're doing something. The one on the right is a different way to do it, a much more streamlined version where you've got different types of users and their common like goals throughout and targeting. So a key bit, like I said before, you sort of like, what should we do on CDP, is to know where to target, where to leverage, and where to go for. They're just 2 good ways of doing it. On top of that, the next bit is to go work with a lot of your business and find out what the goals and the objectives are, and to overlay them on top of the journey maps you've just seen. So the key bit here is getting different stakeholders involved. So when you talk about OKRs and KPIs, the flow we have is like what's called a decision model. And you've got to find out the objectives, the goals, KPIs, targets, and then segments. To do that, you need to speak to various different people. It's not a magic document that will exist in your businesses. So you need to speak to C-level, then you need to speak to product owners and analysts as well. It's really important to get hold of these bits of information. Some, you will see in a minute, get used straight away onto the journey map where we overlay goals. Other ones, especially segments and targets and KPIs, that's what's then used in our experiments within the model itself. Another thing to obviously bear in mind, this is from Sitecore. This is obviously the different types of experiences you can do. I'm not going to go into too much detail about this other than there's different ways of doing it. Once you've got your flow, you've understood where you need to target, you need to know what goals there, then start having a think of which experiences you want to start leveraging with those models.
So it's a mapping exercise.
Yeah, really. Definitely. So sometimes you can have more than one. It's not saying it's like exclusive, but start thinking about, I've got this problem. I don't know, let's say someone's leaving the website. Which experience do I want to leverage to put those things together?
Last sort of couple of theory slides before we get onto the examples, but you've got to reckon with models themselves as well. And decision models lie at the heart of Sitecore CDP and personalize. When you're working with them, you define business logic, which lets you choose the next best action when you're making an experience. That next best action might be an offer, it might be a remarketing action that might be something on a different channel that you're not considering at that point. Decision models, really at their heart, they're there to help marketers understand the where, the when, the how of showing offers, of combining your offers to your experiences, as I said, or your next best action. There's a few key components that come into them, and we'll talk about some of these as we go through. Decision tables and programmable decisions, honestly, are the bread and butter of them. You'll be working with those mostly especially when you've got a fairly straightforward decision model. They are either tabular formatted, kind of configurable bits of UI that you can program your business logic into, or they are little snippets of JavaScript that you are writing, combining with the API inside CDP to do a calculation to work out what your next offer is. And there's other things as well that you can combine in there as well, like AI models, as we saw somebody did a talk about that earlier, and then data systems and destinations. So if you're connecting to like an email send or an SMS send, that's another thing that you'll connect up there. CDP uses that decision model and notation standard. You build these from the ground up, and you're looking at typically inputs, decisions, and outputs. I'm just going to gloss very quickly through this so we can get into the examples. The inputs are the data that you're requiring to make the decision. So your guest, the sessions that they've had, the offers that we might have made are coming in from another area as a knowledge source. And then any orders that they might have made already at that point that you'll have logged in the customer data already.
Yeah, so this slide was just to preempt what you're going to see next. These are the things we've talked about, but you will see them in each of the 5 different experiences we've got. So again, you'll see where we found the pain points, where we found the problem space. You'll see what then goals and KPIs are associated to it, and obviously the main bit is you'll see how we configure the CDP.
Cool. So this first example is an experience based on known information. So in this example, we've got a known customer arriving onto our website. That could be, and this customer then does something that identifies them to us. But that could be any other known information. They could have come in through an SSO. They could have come in through being on a different channel where you know exactly who they are because perhaps it's email or something like that. But just a highlight of what you can do in CDP and personalize with a customer that's already known. So I've got here a classic simple web experience to show you. We built a very, very basic spa website just to give you some illustrated examples. And here we've got a customer identifying themselves through a contact us form. Customers, this is a CDP word, so they're guests that have identified themselves on the channel in some way through a purchase, through a loyalty program, through something there. Apologies, you can't see exactly what's going on. It's a little bit blurry there, but essentially we're going through a contact form, putting our details in, putting a subject and putting a message in here. And we'll show us in a second here, leveraging information learned about this customer to show them a new experience. I'm typing really slowly, apparently. Just really, really wanted to see what I was typing in the... there we go. Yeah.
I think in this case, your scenario here is someone who's a member is more engaged than a standard visitor. That's the pain point, and that's where you want to sort of leverage it.
Yeah. So you can see here, they come back to the home page, and then we've shown a templated web experience. CDP, I think people have spoken about this already, but CDP and Personalize come with a series of web templates that you can work with that you can very easily drop in to show your experiences. So web experience is an offer or a next best action that runs on the web or any web-based app. And they're used by marketers typically without a robust product team, or by those or even by those with significant development support if you've got the team to write the JavaScript and the HTML and CSS to drive them. They use a decision model to recommend the right offers. You can select from templates or start from scratch. And they can be drawn from a live audience filter or come from a prepared segment. So we'll just show some of that briefly now. So here's a decision model. We've got our inputs at the bottom. We've got guests, and we've got their sessions. And then we've got a little programmable decision here, which we'll go into, which just checks the loyalty level. And you can see this is so cookie cutter It's literally 4 or 5 lines of JavaScript. All of it's doing is looking at the guest, looking at their data extensions, which we've provided, and looking to see if they've got a loyalty level, which is some external data that identifies them to us that we've put onto that customer. And again, that could come in through logging in, that could come in through a prior purchase, it could come in through CRM. It depends entirely on what you've hooked up to your CDP. Here I'm testing it. So a really nice thing about CDP Personalized is that you've got this wonderful test canvas. So I can test here my theories, make sure the JavaScript runs. If I've got any logs to print, it will show it there. It will show you also the full response. So there you go. We can see the JSON. We're shown the offer that's being made. And indeed any information about the guest as well. This next item here is a decision table that I mentioned earlier. So again, it's tabular format. We've got our input coming in from the programmable decision, and we've got an output, which is the offer that we're matching it to. There we go. And then, yeah, the other thing we're connecting it to here is the knowledge source, which is our offers, and I'll show you how they're put together later. Here we're into the decision model itself. You get a bit of data about it on the operational side. You can see, for example, I think I'm showing the 15-minute, but I'll probably jump to the 2 hours so we can see some actual data. There we go. So you can see successful executions per decision model, per variant. You can have a look at that as well. You know, what's been going on, have there been any failures, what the errors that are coming out of that, you can debug that as well. And here we go into the web experience itself. I think this has been shown already by some, but you can see here that we've got on the detail side of things, you can see any detail like there, like a hypothesis if it's an experiment. But also here on the main build tab, we can see the variants that we're showing as well. And we can see in here in the basic editor the ability to put in templated text. But also, if we wanted to add anything more specific, we've got an advanced editor that lets us look at the HTML, the CSS, and the JavaScript as well. You can also preview things. We've got another variant here, like a white background. We can see the buttons. Here we've changed the button text to yellow to be on brand with our SPA website. Here we've got page targeting. So it's interesting to note that, I'm just going to try and see if I can pause this. There we go. It's interesting to note that if you're working with CDP Personalized, it will run the experience on every page of your website unless you specify page targeting, and indeed for audience as well. If you don't specify an audience, it will run against every single member of your audience. So led to a hilarious moment on our training course where we had for about 2 minutes, our experience was showing on every single person's website that they were running on the Partner Sandbox, which was a little bit awkward for a while, but we got there. So make sure you specify the page that you want it to run on. And then the audience is really the segment or the slice of your users that you want to show this experience to. Let's get this going again. Now this can be a live real-time audience, which is where you put a snippet of JavaScript in there to filter out exactly and choose who you want to show it to. And we're going to pause it briefly there just to get into showing. Hopefully that won't take too long. You can always skip this forward a little bit as well. And we'll show kind of how simple it is to put together a little script that will tell us whether or not, there we go, we've paused the experience, whether or not we want to show this or not. So if you go into audience, we'll look at the real-time audience in a second. Oh, we're going to choose a segment. Okay, we choose a segment. We're just showing you here that if you want to use a segment to drive this instead, and that could be something about your pre-owned customers that you already know about, remove the real-time audience, and you can work with a segment, and they're a known entity. And the segment could be a slice of your audience that has been calculated with a series of parameters. In here, it's whether they've ordered something and whether that order, the point of sale of that order, is equal to the website that we've chosen on there.
I think that's like a really good feature, the live audience versus the segments, because I think sometimes you either know it or you don't know it. A lot of the times with the segments, you have done a lot of groundwork, certainly with marketing teams, but sometimes you just need to test it in a live environment and go for it.
Yeah, definitely. So here we go, looking at the segment in a bit more detail. So it's live. We can see that we've got the usage of it. You can see which experiences it's also used on. And we can also see We're going back in to the sidebar now, to this experience. We can see that we can restart this and it will run just fine with the segment that we've just set up for it. So our next example is experience based on a trigger. So this is a very classic CDP personalized example that you do on training, but it's also very practical because it's something that you will encounter as a need from your clients. It's a classic kind of cart abandonment, but this also could be a sign up to a newsletter, a product's being favorited. Are you still interested in something? It's an interactive experience. It's a triggered experience indeed.
It's probably one of the most common ones to solve, I would have thought, with CDP. That's where, natural drop-offs, that's the things you want to convert around, don't you, and pick customers back up again.
Yeah, absolutely. So abandoned cart is a typical full stack experience. In this case, it's what's called a triggered experience, which is an experience that's configured to run when there's a change to data or when an event is raised. So here I'm booking a spa, choosing the date for it, and then going ahead and booking it. There also exist interactive experiences which do not rely on a trigger, but instead provide an API response, and that draws data across your stack potentially if you've got other external data that you want to leverage. Talk about that in a bit more. So here what I'm doing is I've made an order, but then I've actually programmed, and I'll talk about ways in which you can spoof this, but I've programmed a little button on the website just to force the session to close. When you're working on CDP and personalized, you're working with a small, lightweight streaming API in JavaScript that you can drop into your website through tags. If you're working with Tag Manager, that's a really nice way to do it. I think this example, I actually had them initially just written into the website and then have been migrating them into Tag Manager before. And especially if you're working across multiple brands, you want to be able to put parameters in and make them quite reusable. Tag Manager, I'd suggest, is a really strong way to go at that. Other tag managers are available. I'm not recommending any specific one, indeed. But yeah, there for testing purposes, I've rigged up a button that just forces the session to close with the API. Really, really nice little hack that you can do. Not hack. It's using the out of the box behavior. But here we'll see we've now sent an email. The experience was triggered based on that abandoned cart. So all that little session close did is it behind the scenes caused an event to be raised, and that event then triggered the experience, which has sent an email to this mailbox that we've rigged up. And indeed, when we go into it, we can see the date was highlighting that as if it's today's date. It was obviously a few days ago now, but just to show that it was current. Progressing through, and there's our email has come through. If I download the pictures, I should see a nice pretty picture of a spa. There we go. If anyone's not been here yet and you've got the afternoon off, go and have a look. It's amazing.
All the pictures are real spas in Budapest, especially that last one, which is a beer spa.
Yeah, there was a beer.
Where it is, yeah.
There's some amazing ones. Are we still going with that? Yeah, I think that's the end of the video on that one. So yeah, abandoned cart is a very classic experience. The decision model for that, funnily enough, identical to the decision model in the first one. Connections, which we'll talk about briefly, they're the mechanism for connecting to external data systems such as services, external services, AI models. Destination connections, they connect experiences to destinations like social media platforms, email services, SMS endpoints, custom endpoints. You have the option of using OAuth 2, basic or no authentication when you're configuring these. Obviously, try and make them authenticated if you can. And you can configure and validate and test those connections to kind of just validate the response that you're getting for them. So you can see here some more data. We've got our successful executions. We can see the API response firing off. And indeed, if we pause this, we'll show you where we're going here and show the API response, which is another thing that you can configure. Hopefully we get into that. Give them a second. There we go. All right. So here's the API response. It's written in a format called FreeMarker, which is gives you a combination of JSON and a markdown markup kind of approach, where you configure exactly what you want to get out of the API response from the experience. You can see the JSON is the response that we're sending off to the destination connection to Mailjet, I think in this case, which is what obviously will send off our abandoned cart email. You see here when you're working with JavaScript or the API response, you've got all the data at your disposal, typically about an example customer that you're working with. Very common to pick a couple of favorites that are in your customer data and work with them because you know the parameters, you know maybe they're in a particular segment, maybe they pass a certain audience filter that you want to be passing for this experience, so you're working with them. Maybe you're choosing a couple that also don't, so that you've got a little bit of a testing rig where you can prove that it doesn't fire for somebody. You can see here that also we can customize any headers that need to be customized. Don't need to spend too much time on that. And then here's the connection. As I was just talking about, it's something I've configured and set up. We've configured some authentication for it. We can look at the headers, and then indeed we can test the response that we get now, fire it off with a test email, and just validate that we're getting a response from it. Obviously, it doesn't have to be an email. It's any RESTful API service that's returning JSON. Okay, so example 3 is an experience based on Invisit behavior.
Yeah, so we've got a few, again, this is quite a common one to be able to leverage. So you've got people doing different things on your site, clicking on different experiences, so we're down into like, when it was on the journey map, those where you've got events going on, different behaviors, going to different areas. You could have your website could be like quite segmented, for example, if you do like different types of products, so people can go to one side versus another. These are really good ways how we can instantly segment bits of the website.
So CDP can store all kinds of behavior about a guest, behaviors like clicks that they've done, goals that they've converted, purchases, how many sessions they're having a day. Talk about some of those in a second. A common use case in CDP and Personalize is to respond differently to a customer that's recently completed a transaction to make sure that we're, highlighting that, yay, do that again. It's easy to make personalized experiences that respond to order data and then analyze it in CDP. You can actually see the order data if you configure it correctly. And then using the preview ability, which I'll hopefully show on this example, just makes it really, really easy. So here we've got another experience. This is what we're looking for, just a light box that's going to pop up and say, thanks for your purchase, please leave a review. We've created our variant. We've finished the page targeting, that's targeted our home page, and then we've got an audience. This is again the spa break recent purchaser. That's a real-time audience that we've configured. Hopefully I'm going to show you it this time. And yet there it is. I'll just pause that briefly so I can talk about it. There we go. So it's really, really simple, like 25, 26 lines of JavaScript, and actually 5 of those are comments. And it's just a little function that's saying, make sure that they've got a checkout event in their latest events. So in the latest session that they've completed, make sure that they've got a checkout event in the events that are in that session. And if they have, then let them through and let them see the experience. So again, this is a little bit of JavaScript. To help drive the experience. So I'm going to preview it now. I'm going to head up and hit that big preview button. And indeed, when we do that, we're actually going to include a guest in the response. So I've got a guest that I've been working with when I've been programming these. He's just got that mailbox that I showed you earlier and a very simple bit of data attached to him. And I'm going to preview it, but not just preview the page. I'm actually going to preview it for that customer who's just made a purchase on the website because I've just made him make a purchase on the website. And then I'm going to show you exactly what CDP and Personalize what Personalize is going to do. And there we go. There's a couple of things to note here. So immediately you saw that we got the response that we were looking for, which was great. And then on the left, you can see that little green tick. So when you're in preview, you've got this really wonderful little bit of UI from Chrome. I think it supports most browsers actually, that will pop up there, and you can dig into it and have a look at, okay, which guest did this fire on? What experience was that a part of? Were there any logs that I need to look at that have popped up in here? Are there any problems with this experience? How long did it take to fire? You can get some really valuable debug information from the model for that.
Like we said, this is like one you're going to use quite a lot of the time, and the fact it's so simple to do, and the fact you can preview it, I think that's the beauty for me. It's like you can have multiple ones of these set up for various different combinations of experiences, and just to be able to go in and check and rerun it for different types of users is such a powerful tool.
Definitely. Often when you're working with spend and commerce and any kind of ordering system, you want to have that data available in your other composable services. So you can, if you've got those checkout events firing off and that order data, that product data going into CDP through personalize, you can see that customer data in detail, including orders, the session timelines, and whatever segments that your customers end up happening to find themselves into. You can even see things like what their channel preferences are, and we'll have a look at that view now. So you can see, for example, you've got their latest, what time they've been online, their basic high-level information. In the debug view for devs, you've got a very rich bit of data about them, which you can obviously map to JSON. You can show it as JSON if you want to, but it just appears here as a nice bit of clickable UI. And you can see the parameters about the customer as well. So it's really, really detailed. You can get pretty much any debug information you need to about them. And there is indeed, I don't think I show it in this video, but there is indeed another debug for the timeline of events as well that you can debug into. So you can see some date information about them, when they've been around, what their total spend is, what their average spend is, how many orders they've made. These spa retreats are quite expensive by the looks of things. You can see their activity heat map, what times of the day they've been on your website or on your channels, indeed what channels they've been using, and what preferred devices they tend to be finding themselves on. So it's really detailed, isn't it?
Yeah, and this is really good gold mine of information where you can then glean stuff like this. You can have a look at several of your users, and that could actually help you come up with segments and sort of like understand other areas of the business that you might have not even thought existed. You might find out that all of a sudden everyone's doing something on a Thursday afternoon. It's like, why is it all happening on one day? Let's target that with an offer.
It's just nice to have the granularity as well, isn't it? Down to the individual customer.
Yeah.
So here's the timeline. You can see what their latest events and sessions have been. So for every session, you can dig into that and look at the details of it to look at the individual events that have happened into it. So you can see here, we've got a couple of browse sessions, one converted session where we actually had a checkout. And then underneath that, you can actually see as well, we've got an email session as well. That would have been one of the abandoned carts that we sent. You can see there, we've got the details of the purchase put through into the logs there, as well as the email event that I showed you just now.
It's interesting. You can tell, obviously, with different browsers and devices. We live in a world, don't we, where it's like multi-devices, isn't it? You might browse on one device and might purchase on another. And this really hits at home that you can quite quickly see, hang on a minute, they're all converting on this one, whereas they're all doing something a bit different on the other.
Absolutely. Yeah, down to the browser or the device. So you can see here we've got an order view. So this guest has made 3 purchases on our website. They're very much an engaged spa breaker. They've got 3 separate SKUs for the products that have come through. That's also been passed through that JavaScript API that we were talking about earlier. But you could also use the RESTful API that there is available. And we can see the properties about them at the high level here as well, including any data extensions that we've provided that might be specific to our custom organization. So here we're showing we've got 4 different parameters that have come through that we've supplied, that we've decided are important to our organization that we want to have showing up here, including things like what's their spa loyalty level, what's their loyalty number. That could be like a organization specific ID. It could be anything. You can really get creative with that, especially if your clients have got very specific requirements. Brilliant. Okay. So example 4, this is an experience on a third-party API. So in our example, we're using the weather to inform an experience, but other examples could be your APIs coming through Facebook, through social media. You've got the ability to leverage your own custom PIM if you've got product information management that you need to be connecting up to your website, recommending products based on location, anything where you can leverage data coming in from elsewhere that can help create that personalized experience. Yeah,
and this is where people like data scientists really help you out, because it's the unknown known, isn't it? Some things us as humans cannot put together, whereas the data scientists can utilize other systems and all of a sudden find some bit of magic.
Absolutely. So this experience is showing how easy it can be to make use of third-party data when informing a decision model. So back to a model again. We've still got our input data with our guest, but now we've got a very simple programmable, I think this one's literally 1 line of code, which is just grabbing the location of that guest. And there it is. It's a few more. But it's saying get the guest city. We've provided in the JavaScript, we've provided that location information to them. That could be something that you're gleaning through hooks on the website, through, again, some form of authentication, whatever it is that you're using to get data about the guest. It doesn't matter fundamentally. It's about using that information. We're then feeding that output into a data system, a weather data system, from an open weather API. We're going to test it now and just show you what it's coming back. So I've opened up a little test where I can test the response. Again, we showed you this earlier. So I'm going to test it now, and we're going to put in a city, put in London, and run it. And we can see the response coming through in JSON. In particular, we're looking at the temperature. This really freaked me out for a while because I was going, hang on, why is London 280 degrees? Before I realized it was in Kelvin. And I've not studied physics for a very long time. But it was a good refresher. I was like, that's not Fahrenheit. But yeah, we can see it gives us back a text description called clear, as well as an icon. And we map that to an output. And then we pop that output into the weather attributes, into this other programmable decision, which again, really, really simple. And all this is doing is saying, all right, take that output from the weather API, pop it into the data that we're popping out about the guest, add it to the attributes that we're exporting from the programmable decision, and then put it into the next thing, which is going to be a decision table. I think I might have just skipped ahead there. No, we're good. Okay, so popping it into a decision table, which is matching the weather to offers. This, again, we've seen this. We've got an input column, which is taking those weather values, so clouds or clear, and then we're mapping that to two different offers. So we've got a cloudy day offer, and we've got a cool off offer if it's too hot, like it's 280 degrees. And you can see there where we configured it, we're choosing an offer template. I've created an offer template inside of CDP Personalize itself. And I can show you this here. We've got 3 examples, that cloudy day, that cool off offer, and another one. And this is how offer templates are put together. They're structured data, series of fields that you configure because you can define the template yourself. And indeed, you can make them various different types. Here we've just got 4 simple fields: description, image, discount, and title. And I'll show you those in a second. So we're building that offer in. This equally could be coming from some external data system that's providing you offers in the form of maybe it's a bit of fuzzy logic, not fuzzy logic, what's the word? A rules engine that you've got from your own organization that you're plugging in. You don't need to be using templates that you're configuring manually. And then, yeah, we've hooked up those offers there just by dragging it on and then connecting it. It's that simple. And there's the offer. So we're leveraging a bit of third-party information, bringing it onto the experience, and then we've got a templated web experience. But that could equally be, if you're putting JavaScript into the experience, that could equally be swapping out your own components for custom components. Especially if you're working with a product team of web developers, they can very quickly knock up something that simply does a hot swap on one of your own components. If you're using Edge, that makes it even easier. You could then very quickly get personalized experiences that are using third-party information.
Yeah, so for our examples, we could obviously pick spas, but you can go down an obvious route when it's hot, promote all the ones which are all outdoor. When it's cold, promote all the ones that are indoor. But loads of companies use weather now. You just don't really use it. So for a lot of shopping sites, for example, the search bar and what's in the search bar keeps changing depending on what time of year it is, but the weather as well. So you'll see, have it, like type in here, and it's like raincoats if it's raining outside, or wellies and things like that. You'll start to notice it more and more when you do your online shopping. Have a look what's going on behind you, and you'll notice it's advertising different things for you.
Yeah. Okay. So, quick note on experiments. Sarah O'Reilly did a wonderful talk on experiments yesterday. Do catch it if you missed it. So I'm just going to touch very briefly on these. I don't think we need to go into too much detail, but any experience can be mapped to an experiment. They're basically the same, just you're creating variants and you're allocating your audience to 2 different variants and you're testing them against one another. If you've got hypotheses about your content and audience behavior, you can measure them and gather data. Example 4 here has been set up as an experiment with a rudimentary hypothesis. Let's actually get that video going. And you can easily use these to make a comparison between different experiences, user journeys, goal conversions to see what is getting the better rate of return. And again, I would really recommend, if you didn't catch it yesterday, do try and catch Sarah's talk yesterday where she spoke about experiments in detail. It was really, really good. So here it's exactly the same. We've got a different view. We've just changed some of the coloring on the pop-up. It's configured exactly the same with the same page targeting and audience. We've got a hypothesis written out there where we've got a CTA with grey text, which will result in a greater click-through than one with yellow. We've got some goals that we've configured, which are around clicking through to the checkout. On the operational side, we've just set this up, so we won't have too much detail. But we've got our executions, and we can compare which are hitting the variant and which are hitting the control. And eventually, as you build up that experience over time, you'll start to get the data coming in. You'll start to actually have CDP and Personalized will be drawing conclusions for you. Cool. So our fifth example, I'm just conscious of time. Our fifth example is experiences using audience sync. So in our example, we've got targeting bought before users into an audience sync. But other examples might be improving your AdWords ROI, working with social media paid ad campaigns, using audience sync to really get a better rate of return for your guests.
Yeah, so I just thought it'd be worth touching upon like paid ads, whether it's social or search, just to give a bit of context to it. The main bit is obviously when you do AdWords, it's all about trying to get valued customers or potential valued customers onto your website who are then going to convert. You obviously don't want to pay a lot of money to get people who aren't going to do stuff on your website. What tends to often happen, and the companies I've touched base with, is they do put a lot into AdWords, but the conversion rates are like really, really poor. It's like, they are getting the brand, they're getting the exposure, they're getting all the other positives, but when those people actually come in, they're not really connecting and making the dots. And that is ultimately because we've not connected the experience to to the adverts, what you're physically seeing, written words, pictures, whatever it is, you're not seeing that back on the web page, because you're going to a default website where it's everything for everyone's purpose. So the whole point of doing this right is you can make that journey much better. You can connect the dots straight away, that it's seamless, that someone's jumping in from your website or from an advert onto your website, and the two things connect, going, you told me I was going to get something for 50%, and I'm seeing there's a 50% offer on the web page. So it's about making sure that they're there, and obviously CDP can help because we can reverse this even better. Not just are we going to get that connection, we can make sure that we're going to target the right potential users in the first place, which we'll talk about.
So audience syncs are exports of segments to some external destination, which could be social media to power an ad campaign, as Dom was just talking about. Literally a CSV file for internal use, could be anything. As long as it can take the response, you can connect it up. So at their simplest, they can just be a downloadable export, but they can be easily configured with anything like a data flow that connects to a RESTful endpoint. You could have something that's sending on the regular, on a schedule. And they help, as Dom said, they help clients maximize the ROI and get the most out of advertising by using segments built into CDP that we've already built, using the data sources an organization can leverage. So it could be your external PIM that you're working with, could be some CRM data that you're pulling in, or indeed that you're feeding to. So here we've got a segment that we've put together, and we're looking at the audience sync for it. We've got a successful sync that's run, and I've exported it to a JSON file, which I'm just going to show hopefully in a second, or already did. And then you configure the sync through templates. These templates you can provide extra information to. So for example, if there's a particular category that you want to tag it with, or an offer template that you want to relate it to. And indeed, some of these can be just a manual send, others can be on schedule. And there's the format there. So here it's just outputting the first name, but that format you can customize to put whatever data about the audience that you want to put in. And there indeed is the output, where we've just got our example customer appearing here with his name. That was our example 5. Thank you. So any questions or thoughts?
This audience export, can you what audience, by the way, like HTTP or like Salesforce, Marketing Cloud, does it have some connectors?
Ooh, connectors. I'm not going to speak to connectors because I know there are some being worked on and there are some that have been trialed. So I don't know off the top of my head on that one. Perhaps somebody from Sitecore. I don't know if there's somebody from Sitecore in. Ahmed.
Okay, it's like there's the batch segment, batch segmentation capability in Sitecore CDP that enables you to batch import. That enables you to import runs with profile and custom attributes into Sitecore CDP. There will be a point though in importing decisions. There's no, there is no published guide to import decisions into Sitecore CDP, but there's a project delivering now called Sitecore Backbone, which is building a connector between our products and part of the journey. So it's looking to that.
The main advantage, though, is that you're exporting essentially known segments of your audience to another system that's consuming them and able to work with that segment to leverage whatever experiences you're trying to drive, whatever campaigns you're trying to run. You're using targeted slices of your audience that probably have a higher conversion rate than just a scattered segment. Yeah.
What about the integration with different solutions that works? What about, for example, to integrate with Google? Is the same, can you use the same approach?
Yeah, so you just be exporting to whatever endpoint Google is giving you, whether it's an upload of a JSON file, whether it's
generally speaking, all the advertising platform accept JSON and REST.
So that's how you do it. Yeah, so you download it from. You can either set up a bit of middleware to connect the two of them, or it will just be a scheduled download that you do manually and upload.
So Alison at the back. Yeah.
So in a situation where you've got obviously GDPR happening and people are saying no, I don't want the cookies that allow us to do retargeting, would audience sync allow us to to basically do that, to say okay, they visited these pages and I want to advertise to them, not to be 100% clear we're in Europe right now, not to break GDPR completely within the letter and spirit of the law, but would that help us?
I would imagine, speaking not as a lawyer, that you would need to have captured the consent in some attribute of the client, of the guest. Would be the way that you would do it in XP. Obviously, you wouldn't be showing them Sitecore Analytics cookies unless you'd already got that consent in your facets about the contacts. So I'd imagine it would be the same thing. But again, not a lawyer. Please don't quote me on that.
I think people are going to think of not clever ways to get around it, but when people sign in, when they sign up for different things, that's when we're going to get more and more of the consent. Can we use it? Can we do different things?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So I think, at least theoretical, one of the value proposition of Sitecore XP was that you did not require a developer to personalize. The marketer could work directly with the tool. But it seems that a lot of the stuff is programmable and very technical, like camel case properties and stuff like that. Is it your feeling that this is a tool where a developer has to be in between the marketeer and the actual outcome of what they do?
Yeah, really good question.
Yeah.
I think you can get, and hopefully I showed some experiences on the web experience which don't require any development. They are just corner pop-ups with inputs that you can, as a marketer, you could put the data into. In my honest opinion, to get the most out of the tool, working with a small team of JavaScript developers, and again, the examples I showed you got 80% of the way towards what most companies are going to want to do anyway, in 5-6 lines of JavaScript. And then not doing that much, just value assignment and maybe a for loop. Like you don't need much, but I do think that you get the most out of the tool while working with a web dev team.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, I totally concur. And I know it was on Alison's and Jackie's talk as well. It's having like a little hub team. It's the best way of explaining where you've got your content people, you've got your marketers, you've got your strategists, and you've got your technical guys too. Because I think you can work it out, but it's minimal stuff you have to do. But I think having them just gives you that extra edge rather than you do get loads of stuff out of the box, but sometimes you just need to tweak it a little bit just so it's right for you and your audiences. I definitely think that you've got to work together, but the sooner you work together, the better, because you don't want to get into the stages where it's like tickets in a backlog and you do your bit and you do your bit. You want to have the chat first, and then it's much easier to get these things up and running.
Yeah, I think, again, referring to Sarah's talk yesterday about making sure that looking at what you're building and understanding what you're building, doing that prioritization. And it is really important to know and go in targeted at the beginning. So, okay, we're building this, then we're going to build this, and then we're going to test it, and then we're going to get that feedback loop, and we're going to work both with the marketeer and the hub team. I like that, hub team.
And that's why we gave you those 5 points, because the reality is you go through those steps, but you've done that for 20 tests, and then you have that prioritization, and then you sort of like work it together. So,
Any other questions? We've got some. Go for it, Ahmed.
The very targeting the experiences that what if I'm working with Edge or Next.js on the front end technologies?
So I guess in that case, if you're working with a static site generation, it's easier because you're outputting HTML and you can put that data with an API response over to Edge, and Edge can then handle that. If you're working with a framework that's not using static site generation, it might be a little more complicated. I don't have a straightforward answer for you off the top of my head on that one. I'd have to give that some thought.